What's up, y'all? And we back, man. Welcome to my channel again. AD from the Ville, you already know. Yeah, we gonna do some gang war reactions today, you feel me? Long day, let me stretch. Alright, let's get into it, man. Remember, like, subscribe, whatever. Do all that shit, smash the like button. You know the vibes. Let's go.
That it makes Southside Chicago look like Disneyland. There's one city that's
What's up,
consistently
yo? How y'all
ranked
doing?
#1 for the past 10 years or more, and that city is St. Louis. So dangerous, in fact, that a few years ago, it was the deadliest city in the entire world outside of the cartel-controlled war zones of Latin America. This has sparked ongoing debate online about just how dangerous life in this city really is. And a big reason for the problem is the readily available firearms that circulate as a result of Missouri's notoriously lax gun laws. Here in the state of Missouri, they have permitless carry laws, meaning that if you're 19 years or older, you don't need a permit to openly carry a gun. This means that in St.
What? You don't need a permit? That's crazy. I might be moving out there. You could just go grab it? Nah, that's fire.
Louis, every block and hood has an army of gangsters openly brandishing military-grade firearms and ready to use them at a moment's notice, with an incredibly fragmented gang landscape made up of Blood, Crip and GD gangs that have come from all over America, and the complicated gang ties, meaning dozens of tiny neighborhood cliques are always at war in a constant battle royale of overlapping and constantly shifting gang ties. Now, while St. Louis has been a fairly underrated city for hip-hop, they have produced some stars over the years. Mainstream rappers like Chingy, Nelly, and most recently Sexy Red have put STL on the map musically, but even for the most polished artists to break into the industry, behind them are secret gang ties that many people couldn't have imagined. Chingy's uncle reportedly was responsible for bringing the 6'2" Brim Bloods to St. Louis in the 80s, giving him family ties to the deadly street gang. Sexy Red doesn't just wear red for fashion either. She hails from a hood in St. Louis associated with the 45 Retta Bloods, and even STL's most famous mainstream rapper Nelly, known for his romance.
Hold up. Somebody knocking on the door. Give me a second, y'all. Hold up. Don't come in my room making noise. I'm doing a reaction. Yeah. Hold on. What I just say?
Romantic anthem Dilemma and smash hit Ride With Me actually has long-running secret affiliations to the Rollin' 30s and 60s.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Crips in St. Louis. However, if Nelly was a rapper coming out of the gang-controlled hoods of St. Louis in this day and age, he might well have been murdered before he had a chance to make a hit song. Starting in Chicago, over the last few years, the drill music culture has taken hold of St. Louis too. Nowadays, every gang has a couple of rappers frontlining the beef publicly, making music all about life on their block, the enemies they've killed or plan to kill, and the high-speed chases with the cops trying to stop them catching another body. The streets have become a battle royale where the rappers roll around their neighborhoods, broadcasting their activities.
They walking around with them things. You see, boy, shit?
And inviting their ops to come and shoot it out with them, with numerous instances of rappers actually arranging shootouts and broadcasting the entire thing live on Instagram for the whole world to see. For some reason, despite the popularity of drill music, St. Louis has so far stayed in the shadows compared to the larger, more popular drill cities of the times like Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. But today, that changes forever, because me and my team have spent the last month doing more research than anyone has ever done on the streets of St. Louis, and in this video I'll be revealing to the world for the first time the true hidden stories of the streets of St. Louis. We've spent hundreds of hours poring over some of the darkest corners of the internet to bring you the craziest street stories to ever come out of this city, and this video will cover every single hidden horror to come out of the St. Louis drill scene, from diss songs that caused instant murders in retaliation, drill rappers turning hood vlogs into open invitations for their ops to come come and slide on them, and loose cannon members shooting at random people with switches on their guns on IG Live.
Whoever in that great challenger, I see it again on my daddy, I'm hitting the button. You better move around as fast as possible, Brody.
Bro, what? First of all, bro, you ain't doing shit. You ain't doing shit. Yo, first of all, like, how you record? You on live? What was you on live just now? Hold on, let me see. This nigga's wildin'. Yeah, he on live tripping, recording and shit. If you gonna do something, niggas be dumb. And if he is gonna do something, niggas is just dumb. You want to get locked up. Like, why are you doing the police job, bro? They're not gonna have to work hard for that check at all.
With the modern day gang wars going on in the St. Louis drill scene, first, let's take a closer look at how St. Louis became one of the most violent cities in American history.
St. Louis, baby.
Content warning. This video is about a sensitive topic involving loss of life. We've removed any graphic content to comply with YouTube's guidelines. We aim to provide informative, factual journalism on a tragic event in the public interest that does not dismiss its seriousness. All clips are used under the doctrine of fair use for news reporting and analysis.
Oh, yeah?
If you want to watch my videos uncut and extended, go to patreon.com/traplawross, where you can get those for just $2. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify. That the killings may well have been the work of the Cuckoo Gang, reigniting fears of renewed conflict. But in reality, the two had been double-crossed by Palazzolo, who himself would be assassinated by 4 shooters already in the following month. But this get back wasn't enough, and in December the ops would spin. While the antics of Sexy Red let the world know that St. Louis was home to serious national street gangs like the Bloods, the streets of St. Louis have really been deadly for decades. The city had claimed the crown of America's murder capital all the way back in the 1980s, but particularly since about 2010, St. Louis has consistently ranked amongst the most dangerous cities in America when looking at the per capita violent crime rates, particularly homicides. And during the late 2010s, St. Louis would go on a streak, having the highest per capita homicide rate every single year, culminating in 2020 when the city's homicide rate was an insane 88.1 per 100,000 people, basically doubling the murder rate of Memphis, which is also known as one of the most dangerous cities in America too. And St. Louis would continue topping the leaderboards of the nation's most dangerous cities, the homicide rate even ranking St. Louis as the deadliest city in the world outside of Latin America. The record-breaking
Really? St. Louis? I ain't gonna lie, I never would have thought St. Louis though. That's crazy. Overshot, right? What we doing? What we got? We got Chicago up top. Yeah, see, Chicago #1. Well, that's 2020. What's that? 2024. Alright, so look, we got Chicago, New York, Houston, Philadelphia, and over in this corner we got St. Louis, Memphis, Baltimore. Alright. It's total on the left. Yeah, they alright. I mean, I don't think nobody should be doing this shit, but if you're gonna do it, feel me?
killings had continued all the way to last year, 2024, when St. Louis would once again have the highest per capita homicide rate, over double that of Chicago, which had the most total homicides. But to truly understand how St. Louis became one of the most dangerous places in America, overrun by gangs and violence, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, because at one point in history, St. Louis was considered one of the greatest cities in the country, known in the 19th century as the Gateway to the West, where numerous explorers and pioneers since Lewis and Clark would begin their journey to settle the American West.
I can't picture it, like, I don't know, I'm from New York, but like, I can't picture St. Louis. But at the same time, like, I do be hearing about them a little bit, but at the same time, I ain't know that whole, you don't need a permit shit. I mean, you could just go pick up Blick like it's a sandwich. Let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese with a Blick on the side, feel me, extra bullets.
History of St. Louis is still commemorated with the city's most famous landmark, the Gateway Arch that dominates its skyline. Being the gateway, together with the city's strategic position at the confluence of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, made St. Louis a key hub for trade, transport and migration, which brought both the people and the money to the city. This ended up making St. Louis the 4th largest city in the country by the year 1900. However, the significant population boom also brought some questionable characters to the city, which planted the scenes for the organized crime takeover during the 19th.
If you're a producer who hates AI, this plugin might change your mind. This is reimagining CoProducer. You can take any sample you find.
I keep doing that. I go on my other account. I keep forgetting.
1920s, when Prohibition-era gangsters took over the illegal booze business and brought about one of the city's first ever gang wars. These would include Italian gangs who were predecessors to the St. Louis Mafia, such as the Green Ones and the Russo gang, led by a notorious gangster called Willie Russo, as well as some interestingly named Irish or mixed gangs like the Cuckoo Gang, Egan Rats, named after their leader Thomas Egan, and their main ops, the Hogan Gang or
Thomas Egan. So wait, hold up, killed by Egan Rats. Thomas Egan, where I know that name from? Thomas Egan. Is that Tommy from Power? Is this supposed to be Tommy from Power or I'm tripping? That's his name, right? Tommy Egan? Hell yeah, his name is Tommy Egan. Is this supposed to be the real nigga? Nah, ain't no way, because this is way back in the day. They probably got the name from this. Seventh man.
Hogan's Jelly Rolls, named after their boss Edward Jelly Roll Hogan. Both Egan and Hogan being not just gangsters but also politicians, which says a lot about how things worked in the Prohibition era in St. Louis. One of the most known shooters of this era was the Green One's enforcer, Alphonse Palazzolo, whose boss was Vito Gianola, the city's most powerful mobster. In the late 1920s, tensions in St. Louis's underworld boiled over, igniting a brutal wave of violence as the Green Ones clashed with the Cuckoo Gang, a bloody feud that raged until a truce was reached in late 1926. But the peace was short-lived, and by August 1927, two prominent Italian mobsters, Tony Russo and Vincent Spicuzza, were gunned down in Chicago, the police suspecting that the killings may well have been the work of the Cuckoo.
Yeah, this is gonna be a long video. This nigga went back, like back in the days, like black and white, gray and more gray. How long is this joint? Damn. We gonna be here for a minute, y'all.
Cuckoo Gang, reigniting fears of renewed conflict. But in reality, the two had been double-crossed by Palazzolo, who himself would be assassinated by 4 shooters already in the following month. But this get back wasn't enough, and in December the ops would spin back again, catching Palazzolo's boss, Vito Gianola, lacking at the house of a possible love interest, with the local newspapers creating full-page breakdowns of the slaying, where the assailants had broken into the woman's house and sprayed almost 100 bullets with a submachine gun, hitting Gianola 37 times. As the Prohibition era came to an end in the 1930s, these gangs moved to other hustles like illegal gambling, union racketeering, and pushing drugs like heroin. And the various Italian gang factions eventually came together to form the St. Louis Mafia, which acted as the biggest criminal organization in the city until the 1980s, when a violent internal conflict within the mob, triggered by power struggles, shifting alliances, and the federal government's growing pressure on traditional organized crime ended their reign.
Giordano's death in 1980 marked the end of an era in St. Louis's underworld history.
August 29, 1980, St. Louis mob boss Anthony Giordano dies of cancer. He had long held the rival Leisure and Michael's crime families together.
Why your man was sitting like that, bro? Why he was sitting like that? Your man, what the freak? What the fuck was he doing? I ain't gonna go back, but y'all saw that shit.
It flew open and just pieces and body went flying everywhere.
19 days after Giordano's death, gang warfare erupts on I-55 when his ally, James Michaels, is killed in a car bombing while behind the wheel.
The information we've been able to determine at this time is that Mr. Michaels was removed from the quote organization.
Law enforcement makes repeated pleas for peace.
You know, it's a misnomer to say they're fighting amongst themselves. When they're killing each other on the streets of your community, that not only reflects on them, it reflects on the whole community.
But as one faction disappeared, many smaller ones would appear, and the crack era brought an explosion of African-American street gangs who took over the St. Louis underworld. But of course, the formation of these African-American gangs in St. Louis began way before that. In the past, St. Louis was known as the most southern city in the north, which was actually a reference to the city's exceptionally racist laws and culture, despite its placement in a relatively progressive northern part of the United States. This was experienced by the city's early black residents firsthand during the infamous 1917 race riots caused by the combination of existing racial tensions and competition over labor in an industrialized urban center. During these riots, white mobs would kill and injure dozens of black people, while their neighborhoods were burned to the ground, causing damages that would be in the millions of—
Shaking my head. You goddamn racist. Shaking my head.
dollars in today's currency. But there was perhaps even longer-lasting acts done by lawmakers at the time, such as the city's 1916 residential segregation ordinance, which stated that once a neighborhood had reached a 75% racial majority, it could effectively block members of other races from relocating there. The results of this segregation are still visible in St. Louis today, with it being one of the most segregated cities in the country, with the white population predominantly living in the southern parts of St. Louis, while black residents settle down in the northern
Like, wow.
Hey man, what's the best advice you can give someone that's in sales?
Switch to Monday
Skip
CRM.
the merch shoes.
Awesome, thanks.
Hold up.
Skip the goddamn merch shoes. That's the best advice we can give you. Skip the merch shoes. Can't wait till I go on my other account.
line between these two communities is the Del Mar Boulevard, but unfortunately for St. Louis's black population, simply segregating them into their own communities wasn't enough. And next, during the 1950s, the city would come after their existing neighborhoods, forcing about 20,000 black residents and 800 businesses of a neighborhood known as Mill Creek Valley to relocate in the name of urban renewal, as the entire neighborhood was demolished to make way for infrastructure like Interstate 64 and the expansion of St. Louis University. But of course, the city had a plan for the displaced black working class residents, as they had just built a new, enormous, state-of-the-art public housing project in North St. Louis, known as the Wendell O. Pruitt Homes and William Igoe Apartments, or together simply as Pruitt Igoe. Designed by architect Minoru Yamasaki, these projects consisted of 33 11-story buildings, which were hailed for replacing the so-called slums on the north side and bringing bright new additions to the city's skyline. But just like everywhere else in America, this colossal experimental project would quickly turn sour, as the buildings were since the beginning stripped of funding and maintenance, while the poor North St. Louis residents became even more isolated from the rest of society as they had been before. And in just a few decades, Pruitt Igoe would descend into complete chaos, as the crumbling projects were taken over by gangs, crime, and decay in record speed. These projects became perhaps the biggest blunder in the history of public housing in America, as several YouTube channels have actually covered this development in depth.
Unfortunately, a lack of funding from investors where the city forced Yamasaki to revise the design for cost cutting. Basically, he was forced to double the density of the buildings and canceled plans for playgrounds, parks, laundromats, grocers, and even public toilets.
The first warning sign was financial. The maintenance of Pruitt Igoe was supposed to be funded by the tenants' rent, but many of the residents were low income, and when vacancy rates began to rise, there wasn't enough money to keep up with repairs. The skip-stop elevators, designed to reduce congestion, instead became crime hotspots. Stairwells were often dark and isolated, making them dangerous for residents. The communal galleries, intended as social spaces...
Ew, that shit looks scary. I ain't gonna lie. Imagine coming out your crib to this. I mean, there's some buildings in New York, I mean, the Bronx, Harlem, all like that look like this, Brooklyn. But like, this shit, come on, bro. This shit nice. You could tell niggas just be chilling there, pissing, all type of shit. Nigga, I know a couple niggas got bodied there. That shit look crazy.
Were soon taken over by gangs, and vandalism became rampant as the buildings started to feel more like traps than homes. Some of the buildings were so poorly maintained that in the winter of 1970, a burst sewer pipe flooded the hallways with raw sewage, which froze to people's beds and clothes, slowly thawing out and leaving their belongings destroyed. Teenagers formed gangs for protection, and violence became a way of life. For many residents, walking into their apartment felt like running a gauntlet of danger. The utopian dream that was Pruitt Igoe had turned into a nightmare of crumbling infrastructure, rampant crime, and hopelessness.
The Pruitt Igoe experiment would come to an end during the 1970s, when these projects were finally closed and demolished, but for street gangs of St. Louis, this was just the beginning.
In 1972, demolition began on the 33-building Pruitt Igoe housing project, built in the 1950s as the vision of the future of urban America. It turned out to be a symbol of all that had gone wrong with America's older cities, and this image would be played over and over again on national television and cited by the commentators and academics.
The 60s and particularly the 70s were some of the most violent times in St. Louis, but the streets were mostly controlled by the mafia and some smaller scale dope pushers such as the infamous drug kingpin Terry Joe Cooley, who would eventually meet his end in 1970 after he was killed in his home in a brutal quadruple murder that would also claim the lives of his associate, his girlfriend, and her 10-year-old son. With the newspapers at the time questioning if he had been killed.
Hey, what? Come on, bro. Like, what y'all doing, bro? Kids, bro? But this is kids, bro. This nigga look like a fish. But kids, though, like the 10-year-old son, y'all ain't have to do all that, bro. That's nasty work. But this nigga look funny as hell.
Growing ambitions to take over the city's drug game. Also during this period, St. Louis would also begin to experience significant economic decline, combined with white flight, as the largely white middle class moved to the suburbs, leaving the predominantly black working classes with crumbling infrastructure.
Left these niggas, they left the black people in the blown up buildings, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, bro. And then they expect, see, this is why I be saying what I be saying, bro. People be acting like black people complain, victim. Bro, it was so much stuff that just got in the way before we not even free now, but for real. So it's like, you know how much stuff got in the way for our parents, and their parents and their ancestors and shit, bro. It's like, it's no wealth and shit. We still struggling. Like, if you get rich, you probably gonna be the first, like, millionaire, some shit in your family, breaking the curse, bro. Like, but with the white people and shit, like, they fathers was rich and shit, so it's not the same. Like, ain't nothing to complain about. Like, you got to go hard and shit, but like, it'd be so much stacked against us since before I was even born. Like, before you was even born, like, it was just this shit seemed like a lifetime for real.
And underfunded schools. These issues would hit East St. Louis on the Illinois side of the border first.
East St. Louis was experiencing in 1970 the kind of pain that a lot of other places were experiencing.
Yeah, okay,
bro, you're done already?
Yeah, bro.
How?
I hired Motion to hire AI employees.
AI employees?
Yeah.
No freaking MERS, no MERS, man. On my next video, we're not gonna have no MERS, I promise. This is crazy.
Depression. There were tremendous amounts of job loss in East St. Louis. It was an old smokestack, heavily industrial city. And as those technology and ways of doing business changed, businesses were pulling out of East St. Louis. Businesses that had been there for 100 years or more.
Then, in the mid-1980s, local newspapers would begin reporting about a rising youth gang problem in East St. Louis. Some of these gangs, unsurprisingly, being Chicago-originated gangs like the Gangster Disciples, Black Disciples, and Vice Lords. Although there would apparently also be some locally originated sets like the 38 Specials, the Scorpions, and the Rat Patrol. The news would also mention how the Disciples worked differently from other gangs, as they had more structure and leaders coming all the way from Chicago to administer discipline and train the local members. But in 1988, things would begin to escalate quickly as a little-known movie called Colors would hit movie theaters all over America, showing the life of LA gang members and bringing with it the vivid imagery, style, and mythology of the Bloods and Crips gangs, which would soon take roots in cities far beyond California. At the beginning of the 90s, St. Louis newspapers would begin reporting how so-called wannabe gangbangers emulating the Los Angeles gangs had begun harassing students in some schools for wearing certain colors. But the police would downplay the growing gang problem in the community. Perhaps this was simply not to spread panic, but the reality of the streets couldn't be downplayed. One particularly deadly rivalry would be between two North St. Louis gangs known as the Boys of Destruction, or BOD, and their rivals being known as the Horseshoe Posse. This rivalry would much later in 2009 be covered in the 4th season of the popular TV series Gangland in an episode titled Boys of Destruction. The BOD gang was allegedly founded by a member named Dorsey Brandon, and the members of the gang identified as Crips, their turf being on the south side of the Martin Luther King Drive, while the Horseshoe Posse, led by a young man named Hitman T, identified as Bloods and stayed on the north side of King Drive. This rivalry would escalate in 1991 when, first in March, Hitman T, real name Tyrone McClinton, was shot to death in front of a gas station when he was only 17 years old. This was decades before gang members had Instagram Live to broadcast their disses and tell the city that they were smoking the latest dead op. But the streets never change, and gang members in early St. Louis would find analog methods to diss their murdered rivals. Following Hitman's death, BOD would allegedly taunt the Horseshoe Posse by spraying Dead Man T into a wall near the scene of the incident. During Hitman's funeral a week later, BOD members would allegedly shout insults to the members of the Horseshoe Posse, almost starting a mass brawl that was barely stopped by the police on the scene. But then, some months later in October, the BOD leader, Dorsey, would be shot and killed during a violent night when 4 people were killed in less than 24 hours, marking just how deadly these gangs had become. The following year, in 1992, the news would report how the gang problem had gotten out of control. Now the police were also seemingly coming clean and admitting that many of the gang members that they were arresting had in fact real connections to the Blood and Crip gangs in Los Angeles, and that their infiltration migration to St. Louis had started already in the late 80s, incentivized by higher profits from interstate drug sales. The police would also reveal that the gang culture went far beyond the black community. There were also gangs with white members and even some fully white gangs, like one known by the menacing name Hitman Posse. The article would also highlight how violent the gangs had become, which was reflected in the number of homicides that would peak in the following year, 1993, with the article highlighting one gang rivalry that had led to 8 youths' deaths in less than a year. This rivalry reportedly being between the 6 Deuce East Coast Crips and the 44 Blue Bud Crips from North St. Louis near Fairground Park. By 1996, the St. Louis gang problem had spread outwards from the inner city to the suburbs in the county, with the news mentioning that the Rollin 60s Crips had become one of the most dominant factions both in the city and in the county. Ultimately, emerging from the Rollin 60 Crips was St. Louis's most popular rapper, Nelly, who while didn't rep his gang in his songs, would make coded references to his gang's colors and be spotted wearing all blue on regular occasions. By the 2000s, various Chicago and LA originating gangs had become a normalized part of daily life in the streets of St. Louis. A new generation had now taken the reins.
Give your short-term rental business a growth boost with Guesty. Reimagine your workflow with a brand new calendar, now with lightning-fast performance and instant updates. Foster guest excitement with next-gen unified inbox tools. Respond instantly with Reply AI's personalized multi-language suggestions, and coordinate better and faster with advanced extensions. Go to Guesty.com and experience what's next.
You think you're fine after a car accident until this happens. Most people don't realize that even accidents that seem minor can financially destroy you when the real costs hit weeks later. If you've been in a car accident recently, even one that seemed minor or where you were just a passenger, you need to hear this before it's too late. Here's what happens to most people. They walk away from what seems like a minor accident thinking everything is okay. Maybe a little soreness, maybe some minor damage to their car, but nothing serious.
While some from the older generation were trying to right their wrongs, mentoring younger members, and helping them escape the cycle of violence. But this normalization came at a cost. Unlike in the 1990s, when media attention was intense, the issue began to fade from public focus, as coverage was mainly reduced to surface-level reports about scattered anti-gang initiatives, while the city would build a new state-of-the-art facility to hold the growing number of inmates known as the St. Louis City Justice Center, or simply Justo. But the spread of gangs continued across the city, unfolding largely in the shadows, until of course the city's homicide rates began to get completely out of control, forcing reporters to look for reasons. While the officials would seemingly settle for half-baked solutions, or some pointing fingers at each other, with certain people claiming that judges were actually at fault for proving who did a homicide too high in St. Louis. But as the homicide rate kept rising to its highest levels, the rules of the game would completely change, with the rise of drill music from Chicago, gangs from Los Angeles, and social media apps from Silicon Valley. Gang members began to use music and Instagram accounts to broadcast their illegal street activities. On social media, St. Louis ultimately became one of the most feared destinations. Nowadays, countless hood vlogs are up on YouTube, with vloggers risking their lives to go and visit the most dangerous city in modern America, racking up millions of views in the process.
Nearly every year for over a decade, St. Louis, Missouri has had the highest murder rate out of all major cities in the entire U.S., leading to its reputation as the murder capital of America. In 2021 alone, it nearly tripled Chicago's murder rate, with over 87 murders per 100,000 people. With such a menacing reputation,
they're saying all these murders and they got the highest this, highest that. I never hear about them, bro. Maybe I'm too local, who knows?
And little coverage of the hoods there past dark, I wanted to experience this city for myself. So in today's video, I travel out to the trenches of St. Louis, visit a rapper who just beat a murder charge, narrowly dodge the police, and spend a night in the murder capital of America.
What had once been a hidden criminal underworld had now become a social media reality TV show with gang warfare.
That's what I'm saying, like, these new criminals, bro, they be like MTV Cribs for fucking their crimes. Like, they be showing off their crimes and shit. Like for what? Clout?
All out in the open.
I'm eating cabbage
to
too. That's
the
what
gang
this is.
landscape in St. Louis today, let's take a closer look at the modern generation of gangs and rappers in the drill music era who are broadcasting their gang wars for the whole world to hear.
For the whole world to hear.
St. Louis locals usually split the city into several sections, with two of the main sections being North St. Louis and South St. Louis, also known as North City and South City. As already mentioned, St. Louis is one of the most segregated cities in America, and the great majority of people in North St. Louis are black and working class, whereas the South is predominantly white and middle class. Although there are also numerous black and mixed neighborhoods in the South, while the invisible line between these two communities is generally considered to be the Del Mar Boulevard. The city's racial population overall is interestingly an almost even split 50-50 between black and white, with there being very few other races like Asians and Latinos in the area. Because of the socio-economic differences between the North and the South, it's no surprise then that the great majority of gangs in St. Louis are located in the North. But due to the mixed neighborhoods both racially and economically, particularly in South St. Louis, this community has several sets that have both black and white members, which of course brings up the topic of the most famous white drill rapper coming out of St. Louis, CTS Lil Wick, whose set 70 CTS is located all the way at the bottom of the South Side. Lil Wick would actually end up getting major headlines after catching a murder charge in 2022 and beating it, but more about that later. Due to the far greater gang activity in the North, the great majority of...
Y'all let me know in the comments if y'all heard of that nigga. I never heard of no Lil... What is his name? Lil Wick? What is that? Little white boy?
Homicides actually do take place there, which is exemplified by the fact that the main street cutting through the north, Natural Bridge Avenue, was named as the most violent street in America in 2015, and the area around it continues to be a hotbed for shootings and homicides.
New tonight, 10 days into the new year, and city homicide detectives now have 7 cases. The latest occurred late this afternoon at Goodfellow and Natural Bridge. We're told the victim was shot in the head.
I've never in my life heard anything like that's what
they
it
let
sounds
that
like.
thing go.
You know, it's like continuous for like maybe 30 seconds.
30 seconds? God damn! They let that thing go. Nigga. I don't know what gun was that, but they let it go.
They say they responded to a shooting in the 6,000 block of Natural Bridge. Officers initially went there and saw bullet holes in the two-of-a-kind bar and grill, a building next door, and a vehicle. Shell casings could also be seen in the street. Police later arrived at a hospital and learned a 29-year-old man, a 36-year-old man, and a 32-year-old woman had been shot.
The street even had a gas station that had so many shootings that it ended up getting the nickname Murder Mobile.
It sounds like they're not even aiming, bro. Like, it's mad random people getting shot. Like, did they even catch the person they was looking for? Crazy.
Natural Bridge acts as a border for numerous gang-affiliated hoods, many of whom are at war with each other in the area, with one of these hoods being 45 Retta, a blood-affiliated hood which just so happens to be where the rapper Sexy Red hails from. The name 45 Retta goes all the way back to at least the early 2010s, while the affiliation with the Bloods likely goes back way before that to the late 80s and early 90s. As the name 45 Retta demonstrates, most of the hoods in the city rep a certain block, in this case the 4500 block of Margaretta Avenue. Sometimes two of these hoods come together to create an alliance, which is often repped by combining the two first numbers of the block. For example, there's a hood in North St. Louis known as 48 Shreve, who are in an alliance called 1448, with another hood all the way down in South St. Louis near downtown called 14 Peabody, or simply the Jects. The latter name coming from the fact that this area has been home to several large public housing projects, in this case particularly the Clinton Peabody Projects, which is the oldest public housing development in the city and about to go through a complete redevelopment. Moreover, while members from almost every hood rep an affiliation with traditional gangs like Crips and Bloods, it's also common for hoods in St. Louis to have some members who rep different gangs, and unlike Los Angeles, it's not uncommon to have both Bloods and Crips within the same hood, although in this case, the hood might rock another color entirely, like the hood known as 51 Scan, or simply Scan, on the west side of St. Louis, who have members from both Bloods and Crips, but rock the colors green and black, which to them represent money and murder. In an interview with Say Cheese, the rapper LA4SS from Scran would explain the difference between the Bloods and Crips of St. Louis compared to Los Angeles.
Okay. And the west side is
Crips. Don't touch my bowl with that hand.
So they're mixed in one neighborhood.
Here's without.
Oh, man, look in your finger.
First scene, let it listen to the track.
So I'll select the minor here and co-produce.
Please.
Funky electric organ. And based off your audio, it's going to give you samples that fit perfectly with it. I like the start of that.
Cool thing about co-producer is no matter what tempo you're at, it's always going to be synced up.
I'm gonna just throw this in real
Tell
quick.
Stephanie to do it. She is Stephanie doing homework. Alright,
Crips,
stop for 5 seconds.
6 Deuce Crips, 8 Trey Crips. It's 9 Trey Bloods, 9 Deuce Bloods.
You know
And
what I'm
all these are mixed in one neighborhood?
Yeah, all these is everywhere. Like ain't no like this ain't gang with this ain't organized gang. This ain't organized crime. This ain't nobody, ain't no OG, ain't no big bro, ain't no like it's a Crip, Blood, GD from the east side, and the Vice Lord all in one corner right now. It ain't about no color over here.
Okay.
It's about what you standing on, your hood, for real.
So that's what makes it different from California. It's not segregated. It's not blood neighborhoods and Crips neighborhoods.
Yeah, like
It's really like
with all
cliques.
due respect and humbly say, like, we ain't no Cali Bloods or no Cali Crips.
To make things even more confusing, particularly the newer generations within these block-based hoods often create cliques with completely new names. For example, 30 Deep Grimy grew up on 2 blocks on the north side, one known as 442ville, or simply the Ville, and the other as 45 Ferris. Both blocks have historical ties to the 6 Deuce East Coast neighborhood Crips, which is what Grimy also reps, but as he got older, he would also become part of a clique known as 30 Deep. And lastly,
Yo, bro look like Javante Davis. What the freak?
due to the history of how the Chicago gangs like the GDs or Vice Lords first arrived in St. Louis, these affiliations remain the strongest within the Illinois side of East St. Louis, while St. Louis the city is overwhelmingly Bloods and Crips. In fact, despite East St. Louis being just across the river, due to it residing in a completely different state, Illinois, many in St. Louis do not even consider East St. Louis to be part of the city in any way, as voiced by 30 Deep Grimy on social media.
Say it like this. All you east side shine cotton comments and shit, bro. It's one, I ain't even finna say one, it's a couple of you east side steady capping. I ain't never heard no.
Here we go again with the self-incriminating bullshit. Look at this nigga. Why is y'all on the internet? Keep the shit off the internet and maybe you'll live or last longer. Like, lock this nigga up. Nah, let me stop. But yeah, y'all wildin', bro. You gotta chill.
From y'all tell me, oh, we don't know him. Cause y'all's from Illinois, not St. Louis, Missouri. Stop saying the east side of St. Louis.
So now that we know a little bit more about the current gangs of St. Louis, let's take a closer look at the city's overall drill music scene, which has made some of the most feared gangsters from these hoods into national celebrities. St. Louis for long has been a city with deep history in music, playing a key role in the early development of blues and jazz, and its thriving music scene has been home to world-renowned artists like Miles Davis, Chuck Berry, and Tina Turner. But today, we're more interested in the music giving a voice to the gangsters, waging war for survival and hustling to get by in the streets. St. Louis has a thriving drill music scene that began to develop soon after the original Chicago drill scene went global in the early 2010s, but it wasn't until the late 2010s that St. Louis drill truly found its own voice and came into its own, getting the local name high speed music due to sometimes having fast beats and flows, but also because the lyrics often mirrored the city's street culture, where members of local gangs had no fear of getting into frequent high speed chases with police.
In St. Louis, y'all don't call it drill music, y'all call it high speed music?
Drill music, high speed, yeah, it's more of a high speed.
I'll be damned if I'm scared of a nigga like this, man. What? Get out, man. Look at this nigga off the perk 30.
More of a high speed, fast tempo.
Imagine bringing your side project to life just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what you feel like you started?
Yeah, I started high speed, man. I was the first person talking about a high speed in the St. Louis, period.
Yeah, because high speeds are real big in St. Louis.
Yeah, people get high speeds every day.
High speed chase.
Normal. It's normal here.
And of course, given the city's reputation as the country's murder capital, it's no surprise then that the music coming out of St. Louis is incredibly violent and disrespectful. Within a few years after the original Chicago drill became popular, several rappers from St. Louis began taking influence from the genre, such as a rap group known as 3 Problems, made up of 3 members known as Lil Tay, Swag Huncho, and Relly Rel, together with other rappers like LA Fours, just to name a few. The history of the St. Louis scene also can't be discussed without mentioning the AMR, or Ammunition Money Respect Clique, who were some of the earliest pioneers, included rappers like AMR Freak and AMR.
All these damn abbreviations be killing me, bro. Niggas be AMFK, KBF, FBT, YBG, FAB.
D Huncho, with Freak even shooting music videos as early as 2015 with the Chicago cameraman Aze Production, and getting features from the biggest Chicago rappers like Lil Durk. AMR D Huncho's most popular song, Snapped, from 2021 has almost 2 million views on YouTube, but that same year, he would be shot an insane 16 times. Fortunately,
can't even enjoy the success, bro. Can't even enjoy the success, bro. I don't get it.
Surviving the attempt on his life due to the bullets hitting him mostly in his arms and legs. Then you've got Jizzle Bucks, formerly known as Jizzle Bands, is another early pioneer of the St. Louis drill scene. He would later drop a popular remix to King Von's Crazy Story in 2019, and would even end up getting a feature from King Von the very same year. Later rappers like 2 Bucks, also known as Big Bucks Von, would help to pioneer high-speed music, even dropping a popular song titled the High Speed Anthem in 2018. While there were also numerous other artists who have been dropping music since the late 2010s and are still doing significant numbers, such as the Monster Gang clique with guys like Monster Gang Jose and Raystar, and of course there's also 30 Deep Grimy, who would gain the most national attention in the scene during the late 2010s, becoming known not just for his raps, but also his wild gold grill grin, which made him resemble a villain like Jared Leto's Joker from the Suicide Squad movie. But like other cities with respectable drill scenes, there's a whole subreddit all about it called r/St. Louis Drill, which is dedicated to covering the city's intertwined music and gang culture today, in 2025 having over 17,000 members, with members of the sub regularly posting about the latest murders, arrests, diss songs, and making lists of the most buzzing artists to emerge from the drill scene. According to the subreddit, the currently top-ranked STL drill rapper is Mo P, who reps 1448. Still a very young and up-and-comer, he's been getting a lot of attention in the scene, even getting shout-outs from the city's biggest rapper in recent years, Sexy Red, who would be seen on her social media listening to his music. Arguably the other biggest name buzzing in the streets of the new generation of STL drill rappers is C4 Murder from Murderside, whose biggest music video for the song Some Light has over 1 million views. Over the course of this video, we're going to go from hood to hood, block to block, breaking down the most important drill rappers and feuds from each neighborhood, and the best place to start is the one who stands above the rest, 30 Deep Grimy, arguably the most influential artist to ever come out of the St. Louis drill scene, a heavy crown that unfortunately came with a lot of unwanted extra attention from law enforcement and his neighbors. 30 Deep Grimy was born Arthur Presley Jr. on August 21st, 1997 in St. Louis. He was raised in a tough environment where gang affiliation wasn't so much a choice, it was a way of life, passed down through generations, family ties, and deep history of the sets in his neighborhood.
This nigga was outside young, boy. And he looked like Stacy right now.
Family had gang ties that stretched back generations long before Grimy was even born, something that he would break down to Vlad TV.
So, at what point did you start really getting mixed up in the streets?
I feel like birth. I don't remember my age. I had to be a kid.
You was a kid, nigga.
Like, it was all around me. It was in my household. It was everywhere.
His mum, dad, grandma, and grandfather were all allegedly members of the Six Deuce Crips, with his grandparents actually helping to establish the gang in St. Louis. But unlike their Los Angeles counterparts who wore traditional blue, the Six Deuces in STL have carved out their own identity by rocking blue and orange. While Grimy's parents would eventually leave the gang life behind, the streets had already claimed.
Every time I hit a bottleneck, I build a new AI employee to crush it. I used to say that I had one AI employee working for me 24/7, but the truth is I've got a team, all custom built, powered
to the next generation, and through his family connections, Grimy would become affiliated with 2 Six Deuce hoods, both located in the north side of the city, including the 442ville, aka the Ville, who claim an area in the historic black neighborhood of North St. Louis known by the same name, as well as a hood known as 45 Ferris, located in the northwest on the border of St. Louis County. Growing up in these hoods, it didn't take long for the violent side of that lifestyle to find him. Grimy would witness his first murder at just 7 years old. As he would later explain to Vlad, this moment flipped a switch that would never turn off.
Do you remember how old you were when something violent happened in your vicinity?
Maybe around 7, 8, 9. It was a bad thing, like the baddest thing. like I witnessed a bad thing. I don't really want to say, but you know what I'm getting.
It was also around this time that he became part of a clique known as 30 Deep, made up of his friends from several hoods, but particularly 45 Ferris. The name of the clique,
let me guess. I mean, at least that's better than the abbreviations, but let me guess where 30 Deep came from. You niggas was 30 Deep standing outside, right? It was 30 AI, got 30 Deep. Said, hey, what should we name our crew? Well, it's 30 of us, and we deep. How about 30 Deep? How about 30 Deep?
Crew's habit of rolling around in large numbers wherever they went.
The 30 Deep name came from you just roll around 30 deep?
Yeah, going to
What
the
I
skating
just
when we
say?
was kids, we used to go to the skate rink.
What the fuck I just say, y'all? What I just said? No thought process at all. Nigga said the 30 deep name, where it came from. Oh, we was just 30 deep, chilling by the store. Ain't doing shit from. Nigga said, what we gonna name our crew? Nigga, it's 30 of us. What I say? I know what I be talking about.
About 30, 40, 50 deep.
30 Deep also included Grimey's friend NWMC
I'm
Murder,
surprised they ain't named it
NWM
30, 40,
standing
50
for
deep.
N-words with money or N-words with murders, depending on who's asking. The two would later become inseparable, collaborating on music and appearing in interviews together as they both built their careers in music.
I'm in here with 30 Deep Grimy and NWMC Murder.
I gotta hear this song.
You guys are both examples of how rap names are
Hold
getting
on,
kind
let me
of
see
complicated
some.
these days.
I gotta see something real quick. Real quick. Nigga name is 30 Deep Grimy, right? Let me hear this shit. Man, shit better not be ass.
Atera is the IT game changer. Atera's full-stack IT management platform has remote monitoring.
Big murder in this motherfucking nigga. Fuck all the goofies. Big Grimy got now, nigga. Me and Grimy took the city, now these four niggas. Only murder niggas.
Free little DJ from your section, cuz know you a bitch. Smoking on D clutching my XDY, I cruise through the strip. Somebody get that nigga crutches, he ain't standing on shit. He called out Freaky decline while she was sucking his dick. Lil D tried creeping through that crib, they shot his ass through the door. He say he smoking on my brother, DP roll up that north. Bitch, I got tight, get my swisher, this shit fresh off the morgue. He claim he beef with 30 D, bitch, when the fuck did y'all score? Street caught him lacking on that Westler blood.
Alright, yeah, that shit is alright. It ain't bad. It's cool. It's something I'll bump it probably. I ain't gonna lie. I probably
Put on his
bump.
cleats, pistol scraped him in that jerk and down there knocked out his teeth.
Yeah, I probably bump. But whatever, we back at it. Like a crack at it.
In a city where every block seems to be beefing with each other, 30 Deep would end up having more than their fair share of ops, as they eventually became embroiled in numerous ongoing conflicts with other hoods and cliques.
Not for nothing though, bro. This nigga look like, what's boy name from P Valley? I think nigga named Murder. Nigga look like real life Murder. Look right here. Nigga look like Murder, bro. Hey yo, pause. Pause, Murder.
Across the city, such as 57 Floyd, aka Floyd Mob,
Damn,
and the
Murder
6000
have
LAC side, aka the Lucille Ave Crips, who were both part of a larger alliance in St. Louis's 6th Police District, also known as the 6. 62 Stillwell is another set located just across the street from 45 Ferris on the other side of Natural Bridge Avenue. They're also beefing with the 8, aka the Cochran Mob, named after the 8th Street and the former Cochran Gardens projects that were located near
8th
downtown.
Street.
And they've
I
also
bet
got
you it
beef
was
with
the
14
8th
Peabody,
Street.
aka 14 Jects, also known as Brick City, located in the Clinton Peabody projects on the south side near downtown St. Louis.
What you
They've
think
got
Brick
issues
City
with the
came
O,
from?
aka the Ops, located on the north side of downtown, who got their name from the former O Fallen Place apartments that have now been replaced with new buildings, as well as several other hoods, as well as 5053 aka G Street, located in the Mark Twain neighborhood in North St. Louis, and 39 Strip, aka the Strip, on the south side. Now, as you'll learn in this story, the conflicts in St. Louis are incredibly
many places,
complicated,
like,
with
God
fractured hoods
damn.
and many small gangs all at war with each other with overlapping alliances.
They all
As one
got their
Redditor
own
would point out,
shit.
despite their relatively small size, the Six Deuce Crips had become one of the most hated gangs in St. Louis at this point, even getting the nickname the Dookies as a reference to the number 2. Grime
Not the Dookies. What the what? Nigga names was the Dookies? The Doodoo Butts? Nah, I'm not. I ain't. First of all, I ain't joining nothing called the Doodoo Butt Dookies, nigga. What set you rock, nigga? What set you claim, nigga? Doodoo Butt, nigga. Doodoo Butt all day. You know what I'm saying? Don't wipe, nigga. Don't wipe. Don't wipe. We ain't doing that shit.
He would become a recognizable sight in the streets of St. Louis from early on, as he would begin to rock gold grills on his feet at a very young age. But unfortunately, another thing that he would become familiar with since a young age was death. For example, as he would later rap on the song Emotions, in 2013, when he was just 16, his friend JD was killed while walking to school, while the following year brought more devastating news when his homeboy Keon, who had motivated Grimy to start rapping as a kid, was also murdered. And unlike many of the kids around him, Keon wasn't even really involved in the gang life, according to a Genius interview.
My homeboy Keon, he got killed. He wasn't really in the gangs or none of this. He motivated me to keep rapping, like start rapping when I was first rapping. I used to freestyle shit as a kid, and
Ning was a big influence on murder, so that's like, we do it for them.
These losses would undoubtedly push Grimy and his 30 Deep friends deeper into the streets, but there would also be another event that would send the entire city into chaos. In August 2014, an 18-year-old named Michael Brown from the nearby city of Ferguson was gunned down by a police officer, Darren Wilson, under suspicious circumstances. This would trigger massive protests in the city of Ferguson.
Yeah, I was tweaking. Hold on, let me fix it. I had to fix something real quick. Shit was tweaking. There you go.
And beyond, transforming the movement that had begun during the previous years after the 2012 killing of Trayvon Martin and 2013 acquittal of George Zimmerman, sparking the global Black Lives Matter movement. But over in nearby St. Louis, the Ferguson protests drew so many local officers away to assist that it left the city's own streets virtually lawless, turning them into a Wild West where anything could happen, creating the perfect circumstances to target your ops and get away with murder, as Grimy would later explain to Say Cheese.
Police cars, you can do anything in the city because everybody was in Ferguson County at the time. It up, so you can go downtown and kill your enemy, go kill your enemy on the west side. Police ain't coming because all the police is in Ferguson. You can straight rob everything in the city right now or kill anybody you want to kill because everybody was in Ferguson at the time.
Growing up in the streets, getting locked up would also be a regular occurrence, as Grimy would end up spending some time in St. Louis's former medium security institution, aka the Workhouse, when he was just 17. However, there were also more positive developments in his life, as Grimy and his friends would begin to take music more seriously, beginning to release songs and music videos under the 30 Deep moniker, with Grimy, who was known on his block as Lil Arthur or LA, would begin to do music under the name Grimy Deuce around the mid-2010s.
Dookie butt,
Unfortunately, he would keep getting in trouble with the law around this time, next getting a UUW or unlawful use of a weapon charge for allegedly shooting out the vehicle. But while Grimy would go back to prison, his friends would keep
like one of them names like when a girl like you, she call you, oh my little, right? It sounds like one of them pet names a girl be like, oh my little doo-doo butt, my little dookie booty, shame, my little stinker. Nigga gang is named doo-doo butt ass. What? This nigga's wildin'. Alright, whoa. The dookie drawers. The dookie drawers is wild. Y'all wild. Hey, yo, what are you doing, bro?
One of these friends being a 30 Deep member called Streets, who was actually Grimy's stepbrother. But unlike Grimy, who was a Crip, Streets was actually a 9 Deuce Blood, once again showing that traditional gang alliances meant very little in St. Louis. But then, in August 2016, when Grimy was still locked up, he would experience yet another major tragic loss, as Streets was gunned down at the very gas station on Natural Bridge Avenue that had become known as Murder Mobile, killed by a man named O'Shar Lapsley. Grimy would rap about losing Streets on his song Emotions, saying he found out
with our cutting-edge chart trading feature and 300+ indicators, you can now trade directly off the chart
when he was inside and vowing to slide for Streets, who he said was a killer just like him. Losing his stepbrother affected Grimy deeply, and he would later get a huge long-lived Streets tattoo on his neck, while also making it a yearly habit of paying tribute to Streets by dressing in red with other 30 Deep members, and later explaining
they still color banging in like in New York and shit, like probably like 2010. Niggas out here don't be color coordinated, like niggas don't be going to prom, nigga shit like together no more. Like niggas don't be red everything, red scarf, red this, red that. Why you got on that blue shirt? We ain't doing that at New York for real. Like it's either you real or you not for real. This some bullshit. I don't want to go nowhere where they still color banging. If they still color banging, don't invite me to that city. I'm cool, bro. That shit is gay. Niggas want to dress alike.
during his No Jumper interview how losing Streets made him calculate his every move going forward.
I don't know, but I lost a lot and I learned a lot. I lost my blood brother on my neck. Actually, for real, he my stepbrother, but I say my blood brother because, yeah.
When did that happen?
2016.
Okay, and so that was like
August.
That was.
I got a month after. And I was in there 9-10 months before he died. And it kind of f***ed up, but I learned. He died while I was in there. I learned from it. up, I just calculated my every move from then.
Right. Damn, yeah, that must have been rough losing them. What, you didn't get to go to the funeral like that?
No, I was a danger to society or some.
Over the years, Grimey's losses would only keep piling up. For example, in 2018, another close friend of his, Tay-Tay, would also fall victim to gun violence, with Grimey later revealing in his song Emotions that Tay-Tay's murder hurt him deeply because they weren't on good terms when it happened. But while being in the middle of an ongoing gang war, in between spells behind bars, Grimey would keep releasing music, often with his friend C Murder, and coming into 2019, that music would begin to make waves in the underground. With the song No Cap first piquing the public's interest, this was a track that saw Grimey and C Murder proudly repping the Six Deuce Crips by rocking blue and orange clothing, while bringing the St. Louis drill scene to national attention by rapping in detail about the local gang politics. Grimey would keep applying pressure and releasing numerous music videos with visuals and lyrics that summed up the dangerous, gun-clutching life of a St. Louis Crip.
Gang is this nigga, bro. He yellow, blue, red. I don't know what he is for real. Like.
And he would continue developing his versatility as an artist. His song Rockstar, which came with a music video, opens with a haunting display of obituaries for the many friends he lost to the streets. Grimey, rapping about the street life with a more melancholic and melodic tone, was showing the world that he was a three-dimensional artist with emotional depth. But don't get it twisted, just because he had a thoughtful and emotional side, he would still be getting very aggressive and disrespectful. Grimey's rise in 2019 would culminate in the release of the song Dead Goofies, a brutal diss track where he fired back at his ops, many of whom had started throwing subliminal shots at him and 30 Deep following his early success. The song provided a masterclass in viral marketing, starting from the thumbnail of the music video, which simply showed a menacing close-up of Grimey pulling off his best evil grin while rocking the iconic gold grills and clutching a rifle, looking like a straight-up Marvel supervillain. While the lyrics of the song were full of local lingo and references, including disses towards numerous rival factions and their dead and alive members. Some of the references would point to events from years ago, like Grimey telling his friends to roll up that Noah and telling how Lil Tyrell should be freed so that he can throw him a homecoming party filled with demons and shells of ammunition. These lyrics actually point to a famous case all the way from 2013 when a 16-year-old named Tyrell Davidson would end up killing another 16-year-old named Chauncey Brown. Brown was also known in the streets as Bossman, and he was a loved member of the 30 Deep clique. Tyrell would eventually be charged for the murder of Bossman, but in an effort to get him free, his mother would somehow get her hands on the
I don't really wanna. Them niggas look just alike.
That's me now.
They look just alike.
I don't like no.
You can tell that's he his mother's son, boy.
Witness list of the case, which would include other youths from both sides of the rivalry, including James Moore, aka James Deuce, who was a friend of Bossman, and a 30 Deep affiliate who had allegedly been with Bossman the night Tyrell had killed him. There was also Noah Barnes, who was a friend of Tyrell and had allegedly been with him the night of the murder. In order to get rid of both of these key witnesses, the mother would allegedly get the help of her brother, nephew, and a third man who would end up hunting down and killing both James and Noah in brutal execution-style slayings, both killings taking place within 7 months of the murder of Chauncey. In 2015, it would seem that the mother's evil plan had actually worked, and Tyrell's charges were dropped. But already the following year, everything would for a moment come crashing down, as both Tyrell and his mother were charged with multiple murders, and the case would become nationally known outside of St. Louis as the Murder Mom.
Whoa. How you murdering shit with your mother, bro? With your moms? Bro, like what's she teaching him, bro? Nah, you don't do no shit like that. This is what I'm talking about. That's crazy. Niggas think that's gangster. That's some stupid shit. Like, niggas need better parents.
Case. But the twists and turns weren't over, and in 2018, these murder charges against the mother were this time dismissed after a detective who was the state's key witness received a brain cancer diagnosis, and the judge refused to delay the trial. Crazy. However, Tyrell would eventually enter a guilty plea and receive a 12-year sentence in the end for the murder of Chauncey, aka Bossman, in 2020. Of course, to anyone outside of the St. Louis gang culture, lyrics like these likely made very little sense. But if you knew, you knew. And for the insiders, 30 Deep Grimey was dissing the whole city and praising the most twisted killers from his hood. The song portrayed Grimey as a certified demon in the streets who wasn't afraid to get on the mic and diss everybody in St. Louis, ultimately piquing the people's interest to start looking into the city's scene, just like the original pioneers of drill had done to Chicago. It was this combination of viral gimmicks, offensive disses, and authentic sounding lyrics that made Grimey a hood sensation overnight, a strategy he would even later acknowledge during his interview with the St. Louis Chicken Diaries.
So let me ask you guys, what separates y'all from them? Like, how did y'all, like, what makes y'all different?
We very versatile. Not only that,
our
And
style.
we put our all in this shit.
Our
Like,
style, our lingo, and then got out to other cities. When we first started rapping, like hard together, like the style caught attention from other cities and the lingo, and like you said, the flashy props or whatever, the clothes, the lifestyle period.
Grimey's demonic super savage image would also cause some debate online, as fans were desperately trying to decipher just how deep in the streets he really was. He'd become the poster boy for St. Louis drill, and Redditors were describing him as Satan's right-hand man, leading to rampant speculation on exactly which murders could have been caused by Grimey personally or his wider crew. For example, Grimey's 30 Deep clique has been linked to the death of a member called K Money from 5053, aka G Street, who was shot and killed in September 2018 on the 5300 block of Minerva Avenue, with his hood beginning to use the name KMG or K Money Gang in his honor. And on Dead Goofy's, 30 Deep Grimey would claim that he was smoking on K Money. Beyond that, Grimey specifically has also been linked to the murder of a man called Booby C from LA Seaside, who was shot and killed on the 4th of October 2019 on the 5500 block of Era Avenue, a murder that took place just a few weeks before Dead Goofy's dropped. There have also been persistent rumours that Grimey had taken part in avenging the December 2020 murder of his friend Freaky from 30 Deep, who was allegedly killed by members of the 8, aka the Cochrane Mob, with a man named Quincy getting officially charged for the hit. However, whether these rumours have any truth to them remains unclear, but what's noteworthy about them is that they all allegedly happened during or after Grimey's blow up in music, with his possible dirt from before that still remaining largely a mystery. But regardless, Grimey's disrespectful but thoughtful music and an alleged deadly reputation in the streets got him on the radars of the biggest killers in the music industry at that time. And already the following month after the release of Dead Goofy's, Grimey would come out with a major announcement. He was joining none other than King Von for his grandson tour, together with his good friend C Murder. Grimey would also get features from big time artists like NLE Chopper and Lil Baby, both of these collaborations gaining millions of views on streaming platforms. But success came with a heavy price, because the same authenticity that made his music compelling was creating him real enemies in the streets. And one of these enemies was KB6 from the 57 Floyd Mob, another young rapper who took Grimey's words as a direct challenge to his crew and family, with KB breaking down the beef on an interview with Views from the Arch.
I wasn't dissing nobody and none of this, like, so shit was like, motherfucker kept on playing with me, kept on saying this. Like, you can't just feel like you can say whatever you want to say to me. I ain't that type of, you know? Like, this way, it go way past the rap shit.
Dead Goofy's and its popularity had painted targets on multiple backs across the city, and KB6 was one of the people who felt compelled to respond with a diss track of his own, dropping his response titled 30 Dead Homies only days after Grimey's song. On the track, KB6 threatened to pull up on Grimey and shoot his girl and maybe even his mother, but while Grimey was now getting targeted from all sides, he would decide to stay in St. Louis, a very bad decision after becoming the city's most notorious gangster rapper. Later on, Grimey's actual neighbor would make a long Reddit post detailing the events that followed after it was discovered that Grimey was actually living on his block. In April 2020, a man living on the 4100 block.
If you get stuck on a melody, or if you just feel like you can't get a song started, Output's co-producer is very dope. They make it much easier for us to either get
of Dressel Avenue in the 45 Ferris Hood would arrive to his home to find the block taken over by young men armed with heavy artillery. It was at this point that he realized that he'd been living next to 30 Deep Grimey for the past 4 years, but it seemed that since Grimey's success in music, he was now taking no chances, and he started having his friends guard the block all day long, even doing what the man would describe as a third world style checkpoint where they stopped and checked every passing car while brandishing their weapons. Then on the 15th of July 2020, the reality of Grimey's lifestyle brought chaos to the block, when an argument between two men quickly escalated into a 40-second gun battle involving 3 shooters erupting right outside the neighbor's home. His surveillance cameras captured the entire ordeal, which he would then post on Reddit for everyone to see. The shootout began with a dispute between 2 men that quickly went left, when the man in black suddenly drew a pistol and fired. What followed was chaos, as both men exchanged gunfire at close range while bystanders ran for cover. A third shooter would emerge from a white Chevy Avalanche with what appeared to be an AK-style weapon, spraying 30 rounds down the street. The violence was so intense that bullets penetrated the neighbor's brick house, with one shot passing just a foot over his pregnant wife's head. 3 men, Jermaine Brownlee, Dwyronte Upchurch, and Cedric Vales, were wounded in the exchange, but no arrests were made at least immediately following the incident. Whether Grimey was...
Bro, all I can say is niggas ain't got no aim, bro. Niggas just be shooting to shoot at this point, cause, bro, how you shoot all them shots and you miss everything? You even missed the people you wasn't trying to hit. That you almost hit. You almost hit the people you wasn't trying to hit, and the people you was trying to hit, you was nowhere near. What?
Present during the gun battle remains unclear, but within 2 weeks of this shootout, he and his crew all packed up and left for new turf, leaving the neighborhood quiet for the first time in months. But after the shootout, at this point, law enforcement had certainly begun to take notice of the city's new rising star, and it was only a matter of time before his luck ran out. On January the 5th, 2021, during what seemed like a routine traffic stop, 30 Deep Grimy was pulled over in a 2008 Pontiac G8. The car had a tail light out, and the license plate was registered to a Jeep, not the Pontiac that was being driven. When police searched the car, they found a Beretta 92 FS 9mm pistol sitting between Grimy and another.
You're cooked, sir. Sir, you're cooked, sir. You're cooked, sir.
Passenger. Despite Missouri's notoriously lax gun laws, as a convicted felon with 2 prior convictions for unlawful use of a weapon, Grimy was prohibited from possessing any firearms. But what made things worse was what Grimy did next. Almost immediately after the traffic stop, he would send text messages to the original purchaser of the gun, asking him to falsify a bill of sale to make it look like one of the other passengers in the car had legally bought the weapon. But the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives had been investigating Grimy and 30 Deep long before the traffic stop, and they had receipts. Investigators found pictures of Grimy posing with the same gun on his social media accounts and in his phone, even posing in some of the pictures with...
Yo, what I say, bro? Yo, these niggas is super dumb, bro. They be getting away with a lot of shit, and then they get caught up on the most simplest, dumbest shit ever, bro. Like, wow, bro.
The alleged original purchaser of the gun right after the deal
whole
had been
point
done
was to
while
not
holding
get
the
caught.
gun himself. They also had text messages where he discussed the purchase of the weapon, with one of the messages even including a picture that showed the gun's serial number. When the trial began in October 2021, Grimy would make one last desperate move to save himself by producing another falsified bill of sale on the very first day of proceedings, which got him nowhere. During the proceedings, prosecutors played his music videos in the courtroom, claiming his music and videos were proof of his violent nature, and arguing that Grimy wasn't just a rapper, but the leader of a criminal organization, and claiming that he had no respect for the law. Grimy's defense team fought back hard, with his lawyer arguing that 30 Deep was simply a brand like Kanye West's Yeezy, and questioning why his music was even being brought up when he was only being charged with gun possession. Grimy himself tried to explain the disconnect between his public persona and his real-life identity, telling the judge that his rap career was just an image that he had to portray and that he felt targeted because of his stage name. But in the end, those arguments fell flat, and US District Judge Stephen R. Clark handed 30 Deep Grimy a harsh sentence, 7 years and 8 months in federal prison.
English rapper is headed to prison on gun charges. Arthur Presley.
Honestly, though, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Honestly, he wasn't supposed to go. Like, honestly, they be trying to make an example out of niggas and shit. I get it, but like, they gotta stop playing like with people's lives. You feel me? Like the judges and all that, they just be throwing out fucking years like niggas is trees. Niggas don't live to be 100. Miss. Feel me? You trying to bring my lyrics in court and shit. Like, what my lyrics got to do with a traffic stop? All that means is that y'all was plotting on me and y'all was just looking for anything to catch me on. That's all that means, because there's no way you stop me, find a blicky, and then try to use my lyrics in court. Like, what the fuck? You ain't even booked me on some gang conspiracy shit. Like,
Deep Grimy was already a convicted felon when he was caught with a gun. After getting caught, he tried to falsify a bill of sale to try and prove that the gun was in fact somebody else's. Presley will spend the next 7 years in prison.
At just 25 years old, St. Louis's top street rapper, who had briefly seemed destined for mainstream success, would instead spend the next several years behind bars, watching his career slip away while his contemporaries continued to rise, and the drill music scene that he pioneered in his city was taken over by other artists. But even from behind federal prison walls, Grimy's impact in St. Louis drill is undeniable, and many still view him as the artist who single-handedly put St. Louis back on the gangster rap map, arguing that he was indeed the best rapper that the city had ever produced, while others simply believed that he had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make it out the streets, and he blew it. But while 30 Deep Grimy was locked up, a new wave of St. Louis drill rappers begun to rise, and none turned more heads than the artist known as CTS Lil Wick, whose buzz exploded not just from his music or his unconventional appearance, but from the fact that he'd already beaten a murder charge before most people had even heard his name. It was 2:15 p.m. on a sweltering August afternoon in 2022, and a 19-year-old Michael Henderson, better known to the streets of St. Louis as the rapper CTS Lil Wick, was riding his mini bike.
I ain't gonna lie, he look like one of them little kids that be biting people. He look like one of them little kids that'll bite you. A little Wick.
side of the city with his friends. What he didn't know was that in the next few minutes, he would be fighting for his life in a deadly road rage shootout that would turn him from an up-and-coming local rapper into a national.
Creators, take these 3 apps I built to run my business made with Base 44. They're ready for you as
national news story, because soon after, a white Jeep going in the opposite direction would suddenly make a U-turn and start following LeWick. The Jeep pulled up next to Wick, and soon things would go terribly wrong, as Wick would drive his motorcycle in front of the Jeep and turn his gun towards the car, opening fire. The driver, 42-year-old Joseph Raymond Shaw, was struck in the forehead by a bullet, taking his life instantly, while his Jeep would then spin off the road and crash near the intersection of Broadway and Nebraska Avenue. Meanwhile, LeWick would also crash his motorcycle before fleeing the scene on foot, unaware that surveillance cameras had just captured everything and that his life was about to change forever. Before this fateful day, LeWick had been born and raised on the streets of Southside St. Louis, where he eventually also attended Roosevelt High School before dropping out in 9th grade. This decision would ultimately lead him not only towards the music that would define his young life, but also make him another kid lost in the treacherous streets of St. Louis, with Wick himself revealing during his No Jumper interview just how early his relationships with guns and violence began, where he claimed that he'd been carrying guns since he was only 10 years old.
Did you feel the need to get a gun at 10? Like, motherfuckers just started jumping people and shit like that. Like, it went from fighting to jumping.
Nah, this nigga sound black.
You know, motherfuckers going getting their own guns and shit.
By 13, things would escalate as Wick would get booked for his first shooting, establishing a pattern that would follow him throughout his teenage years.
I got booked for an assault first degree when I was a juvenile. I was like 13 or 14. Yeah, I had to shoot somebody. They was waving the gun. I was just walking down the street. It was this grown dude, and he like, you grinning at? And I'm like, huh? And he instantly get the waving his little gun, and I instantly up blick on him. He like, you ain't gonna blow that motherfucker, white boy. You ain't gonna blow that motherfucker, white boy. I just get the blowing at his ass, and I got booked for that. That's when I first even found out what self-defense was.
A few years later, LeWick would start his rap career at the age of 15, slowly crafting the persona that would eventually make him a standout in St. Louis's drill scene.
Got me rapping and shit, and they was fucking with it. We turned up on that.
And what age is this when you start rapping?
I want to say like 15.
Around this time, Wick would also seemingly begin experiencing losses to the streets, with one of the hardest being the death of his friend Jody, who would be killed in a shooting. At this point, Wick had become affiliated with the local gang set known as 70 CTS, CTS standing for both Courtois Street or Certified Trap Stars, with the gang being located far in the south side. His set would also be affiliated with several other sets and cliques, such as the clique known as the Valet Gang, with members from the hood known as 43 Gib, from the 4300 block of Gibson Avenue, known for rappers like Wanky G, and a clique known as the Artillery Gang, whose most famous member is a rapper known as Esco Jammin from the hood 5053, or simply the 50, in North St. Louis. In 2021, Wick began to drop numerous music videos, and while it's not clear how much attention these videos were getting at the time, Wick would immediately catch people off guard, being one of the few white drill rappers coming out of St. Louis. But don't let his skinny frame fool you, this is a dangerous young man. He can be seen toting guns and rapping about shooting people in numerous of his songs and videos. In fact, he likely reminded many fans of a white drill rapper who went viral a few years earlier called Slim Jesus. However, Slim Jesus notoriously lost all his aura after admitting that he wasn't really a savage in the streets like he portrayed in his music. However, CTS LeWick was the real deal and really rapping about his real life in the streets where he had just caught a body. Soon he would begin to catch some attention online, like in the St. Louis drill subreddit, where someone would post a picture of Wick toting a Draco together with members of the Valet Gang and Artillery Gang, with one user commenting how he must be either the plug or really about it, to which another user would comment how Wick looked like he really had some bodies. However, what would really start to get Wick some attention was his appearance in the YouTuber Tommy G's 2022 vlog about the gangs of St. Louis, where Tommy would pull up to Ruskin Avenue to film with the Artillery Gang, with a young Wick also making a cameo.
Oh my god.
What's up, fellas?
How's it going, boss?
Alright. Fellas, where are we at right now?
Ruskin Ave. Yo, Ruskin Ave with it, man.
In the video, the whole group can be seen showing off guns while claiming they were just protecting the neighbors.
What do you think the neighbors feel about this? Are neighbors scared to go outside?
They think it's cool because they feel like they well protected type shit. They rather have some guns over here than not have no guns over here.
Wick would also get to talk to Tommy, revealing that he was only 17 years old at the time of this video.
How old are you guys?
This exposure would help launch his profile in the STL drill scene, and his song Smash, which he had released exactly 1 month before the release of Tommy's vlog, now sits at almost 2 million views. But just a month later, in August, none of that mattered, because LeWick would get involved in the shooting that killed Joseph Shaw and fled the scene, becoming a wanted man in his hometown. According to a Views from the Arch interview with Wick himself, he wasn't exactly on the run, but he was actively ducking the cops, explaining how he was using the time to actually try and find a good lawyer.
I gotta get a lawyer.
like that, you know, I gotta get a lawyer. Yeah. Cause I wasn't finna go on a run. I ain't finna go on the screen for that shit. You gonna get caught.
Yep.
So I'm like,
at least he know.
Like,
at least he fucking know.
I'm gonna eat good for a second. Like I was ducking that.
Get your shit right, you know what I'm saying?
I was ducking that, you know. I was ducking the police.
Get your shit right. Get your money up. Handle your affairs, you know what I'm saying, and turn yourself in.
Like a month.
A few months later, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action, facing the possibility of life in prison. On paper, the prosecution had what looked like a slam-dunk case, as surveillance cameras had captured the entire incident. But when the case went to trial in January 2024, LeWick would recount how he and a few friends had been riding their mini bikes around the city when Shaw's white Jeep had made a U-turn and started following them, before pulling up next to him, the two exchanging some heated words before the Jeep's occupant pulled out a gun, causing Wick to speed off. But only seconds later, he would hear gunshots and pull out his own weapon, returning fire in self-defense. While the prosecution would claim that there simply wasn't enough time shown on the surveillance video for these events to have occurred in the way that Wick claimed, he would go on to beat the case and be found not guilty on both first-degree murder and armed criminal action charges. Wick would get back to freedom, and with a legal body to rap about, he would jump headfirst into the drill scene to take advantage of his new image as St. Louis's biggest demon, dropping a music video titled First Day Out in February 2024, about a month after his not guilty verdict. The song and music video would see Wick rapping about shooting people through their...
Yeah, that nigga going back to jail. He's going back just off the lyrics. I could tell that's where this is about to go. How much you want to bet he get booked again? Like, he got away with it, then he gonna say some stupid shit, watch.
windshields, and he would state that if labels want to sign him, now it's going to cost them about $10 million. The track would go on to rack up almost 2 million views in about a year, proving that his legal victory had somehow transformed him from a local STL rapper into a household name, and he had literally lived out the scenarios that he had rapped about and walked away to tell the tale. But CTS Lawwick's legal victory didn't end the conflicts in his life, which had long been brewing in the background, as the YouTuber STL rap videos would later break down on his channel. Esco Jammin, the rapper from Ruskin Avenue in North St. Louis, where Tommy G had filmed his vlog with Artillery Gang, had been collaborating with Wick in the past on several songs, and it seemed like they'd become genuine friends. However, things would begin to go left after the Tommy G video, as it would turn out that the police had actually launched an investigation into a slew of car break-ins spanning from Amazon warehouses to children's hospitals all over Metro St. Louis.
Overnight, police responded to calls for car break-ins in 2 major facilities that looked a lot like this. Car windows bashed in with glass everywhere. This happening at the Amazon warehouse in St. Charles, and then here at the Rankin Jordan Pediatric Center in Maryland Heights.
This would result in the arrest of multiple people, including Wick's right-hand man, CTS T4, who was now facing dozens of felony counts for everything from property damage to gun theft, and would later be slammed with a 5-year sentence. Shortly after, LeWick would also get locked up for the Shaw shooting, leaving guys like Esco to hold things down while he fought for his freedom behind bars. But from LeWick's perspective, Esco wasn't doing enough to support him during the darkest period of his life, while also moving wrong out in the streets.
It ain't really too serious, motherfuckers. It's a lot of shit. Motherfuckers wasn't hitting my books. Motherfuckers was moving wrong. I'm hearing they're popping perks and shit.
However, the final straw allegedly came when accusations of snitching entered the picture. During the car theft investigation, someone had allegedly given police incriminating information, and fingers started pointing at a member called Len Steppedy, a family member of Esco's crew. LeWick would quickly sever ties with everyone connected to the alleged snitching, including Esco, and by the time LeWick beat his murder case and got released, the two former friends who had built their careers together had become bitter enemies. T4, who has since gotten out on parole after doing 50% of his sentence, would open up about the beef and the snitching that led to it in his interview with Nick O'Neill Media.
Man, I see Discovery and shit, man. He like, yeah, man. I was downtown. You know what I'm saying? Like, I called my mom and my people there for a ride, and they sent Thomas. You know what I'm saying? That's me. That's my last name. They sent Thomas me, and I ain't know the car was stolen. I ain't know the guns was stolen. Shit like that. Ooh. They asked me how the guns came to my crib. I said my friends had it. You know what I'm saying? Just saying shit that implicated that I was there. You know what I'm saying?
Identify them as the driver of the
stolen car.
On bro.
First off, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, he tell him.
You could just shut the fuck up. Man, I've been through the whole time I was locked up, no bullshit.
Been winning with us.
Esco, on the other hand, would respond to T4's version during his interview by saying that the reasons for the beef were much deeper than that, but he didn't want to get into it.
Oh, we don't fuck with them. That's about it.
It's like everything that like bro came on here and saying, it's like true about like what he was saying. But goddamn me, it's like more like it's more to the story. Goddamn me, it's more to the story.
It's more deeper than that.
Yeah, it's more deeper than that.
You know?
Yeah.
Because of this beef, Esco and Wick would begin trading shots on social media, with Esco pulling up to Wick's hood and taunting him on his IG story.
Scared.
Hold on, stop right here. Scared, scared.
You said scared, scared.
Yeah. Cause out here playing. Yeah. Out here playing. Look. Out here playing. They just posted like they spent through her, gang. They spent through her all day long.
He would also diss another CTS member in a very disrespectful way by posting a freaky photo of his sister, and even releasing a song and music video titled CTSK or CTS Killer, where he would take numerous shots at CTS LaWick, starting by saying how Wick knows that Esco has been about that life, but now that Wick has one confirmed body, he's acting like he invented killing, while also claiming that Wick was just mad about the fact that Esco was making money while Wick was still broke despite all the media attention. But Wick's beefing wasn't just contained to St. Louis either, as he would notably participate in dissing the deceased Chicago rapper Bloodhound Lil Jeff in a vlog, while his friend would shout out Bloodhound's Ops, a gang from Chicago called the 9-5 Mob. So far, Lil Wick has made good moves with the cards that he's been dealt, and if he can stay focused on the music now and leave the street politics behind, he could really go far. His musical catalogue is really impressive, with 2 full-length mixtapes, Facing Life and Life of a Trap Star. Wick delivers really aggressive and high-energy drill raps over hard beats with a level of energy and rage that verges into punk rock at times. I feel like the energy of CTS LaWick's music does kind of remind me a little bit of Lil Jeff, but with a slightly more Midwestern Southern vibe. But you can't live like Lil Jeff and rap about it for too long. So I hope that at this point in his life, CTS LaWick has distanced himself from the streets and focused more on business and music. Because if he keeps getting pulled back into these street beefs, it's likely only a matter of time before he finds himself right back where he was last time, or even worse. LaWick has managed to become one of the most buzzing artists.
I've recently come to learn that a lot of founders and marketers don't quite know how to look up the competitors' marketing strategies. I personally like using this with the startups that I work with.
Artists in the world of St. Louis gangster rap, all off the back of his case, and he's a legend in the city just like 30 Deep Grimy. But elsewhere in St. Louis, the newest and most dangerous generation of drill rappers are now battling for who gets to be the next big artist to come up out of the streets. But for even some of the most buzzing new rappers, being so close to a gang at war can bring your life and career to an abrupt halt at any moment, and one of the core tragically ended up in a shootout, taking both of each other's lives at the same time. Tucked between Interstate 70 and Riverview Boulevard in North St. Louis lies the Walnut Park West neighborhood, where the 5700 block of Floyd Avenue stands out as one of the most notorious blocks in the city's drill scene, forming the main turf of the hood known as 50.
Yeah, y'all, you already know. Like, subscribe, push that like button, smash that jump. You know what I'm saying? Share my page if you rocking with me or whatever. But yeah, we out. I ain't watching this whole thing. I'ma save, cause he obviously talking about like different blocks throughout this whole joint, different cities. So I'ma like break these down and do separate videos. But I did 2 so far. I'ma break those into 2 videos. You already know. Holla at me.